Welcome to Legal Candy. I am your host, Attorney Candice Colucci, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, MK, our content producer and paralegal in our law firm. We are with Colucci Law Group. Welcome back. Hello, MK.
Hello, Candice. Glad to be back. Glad to see everybody.
So excited. Today, we have got an explosive episode. We're going to talk about Trump's unprecedented inauguration. Can't even believe now we're here after it's taken place. And his biggest and boldest and the most debated executive orders that he signed, the pardons that Joe Biden signed in that 11th hour right before he was leaving office. We're also going to be able to unpack some of the issues around some of those executive orders about the 14th Amendment. What will that mean for immigration? And then be able to look at what does that mean for the legal ramifications of all of those cases that we've talked about before that Trump had before going into office. We keep on using that word unprecedented times, and we are literally in the middle of it.
Trump calls it the golden age now.
The golden
we have
age.
entered the golden age.
Who knows what that must mean as being the golden age? But I do think that we're in a very interesting time, and I think that it was really real and became alive during that inauguration, because that was probably the most awkward and moving
and
inauguration.
Real.
Yes.
And invigorating.
Yes, I think it seemed, and I also just really think, and we'll get into kind of everything that happened during it, so many things were happening at one time. And I think it just shocked a lot of people that they were sitting there and watching it, and it was happening in a different way than like when President Obama became president. That had its, I feel like there's so many inaugurations that have a different kind of undertone text to it, you know?
There was
what
the
is this person standing
too,
for?
which was different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. What do they stand for? What does that inauguration actually mean? Because I remember when Obama was becoming president in that inauguration and what that meant to a generation of African Americans, right?
Yes.
It was so moving. For the world and United States. I think it just had so many other different undertones. That wasn't just like, okay, he's going to be president, but it was also like, what did it mean for so many other people? And I think that with this issue with Trump was, what did that mean for so many other issues that were happening at the same time
and so
within
many
our
other
government?
Americans, just like Obama's inauguration meant so much to, so many other Americans. And I think Trump's did the same thing for a lot of Americans that felt like they weren't being heard.
Both ways,
because so and now
yeah, we're back to seeing people crying again on the internet.
Yes,
very upset.
But just out of curiosity, do you feel a sense more of I feel like I don't know, maybe it depends on your algorithms, but I think people seem upbeat.
I think they seem hopeful.
Things are moving.
Here's what I can tell you about what I think that people believe now more than ever, that I think people used to blindly believe your government, right? You just believe what was being said. Then very quickly we started realizing that maybe you can't believe everything you see and hear. And I think then people started questioning the government. And I think President Trump became the face of what if your government potentially is utilizing their power and position for their own personal gains.
Not looking out for your best interest.
I think that became a question that people were asking. And I think what people feel like now is, no matter what it is, this is what happened last time when Trump became president that I thought was, we were talking about before, is I believe that now more than ever, we were probably going to get the closest version of the truth of so many things. Now, I don't think he's going to allow them to continue to lie and manipulate and hide things. That's what a government does. It's not Republicans or Democrats. Everybody has done it. They're both sides. But I don't think that he's going to be of that rhetoric like he wasn't before, of allowing that behavior to continue.
And the transparency has already been, he's already showing that with opening up some of these files and leaking some of that and letting us know, with the DOJ department, is that how you pronounce it, and what the federal government has been spending on all these different things. He's just saying it's this much money, this much money. We don't need, he's been very transparent.
Yeah.
Which is, for me, I'm in the middle. It's refreshing.
Yeah.
I think
that's what a lot of people feel. I think that's true. So on Legal Candy, our job is to unwrap those mysteries of the law and give you some of those sweet, digestible legal insights. And that's what we're going to do. So give you our legal disclaimer is before we dive in, please note that everything that we talk about today, it does not create an attorney-client privilege. If you have any questions, any legal questions or comments or concerns, reach out to our law firm, Colucci Law Group. Our office number is
727-734-9438.
No, 733
9438.
727-733-943. I usually say it wrong.
Oh my gosh.
And if we can't help you, we will guide you in the right direction of someone who can, or another law firm could potentially help you. And everything we talk about today is all available on the internet. It's all based on research. So if you have any questions about the legitimacy of it, just Google. Get right there and just start clicking on some buttons. Let's get into Donald Trump's second inauguration. He became the 47th president of the United States on January 20th, 2025, on Martin Luther King Day. And this was interesting. So due to the freezing temperatures, that's the reason why it wasn't held outside. Like last minute,
safe.
I love, there was these great memes that were like, imagine if you spent all day putting all of these chairs up outside for them to be like, oh, well, we've decided we're going inside. So they end up going inside. And then the inauguration that people assumed was never going to happen. There are people who believe this was never going to take place again. And so what was so interesting, in my opinion, about the inauguration was, I don't know if there ever had been a moment where so many people in that same room had not just talked ill of this person who's becoming president, right? They had said things like he was a threat to democracy. Like
he's a Nazi.
If he becomes president, our nation is just
over.
Done. I mean, I don't think there has ever been such kind of intense disagreement between political candidates and political sides than it was now in convincing the public to believe that if this man takes office, we are doomed as a nation, while they have to sit there and watch him take office. That, I think, was probably, in my opinion, one of the most pivotal moments, is just looking at all the people in that room who had said such starkly just assertive remarks of how horrific this will be if he becomes president, how it should never happen, and then had to literally stand up and kind of, almost kiss the ring and watch him take office.
I think a lot of people were relieved that at least they felt that a competent person now held the reins of the president of the United States, contrary to Biden and all that, that gaslighting that had been going on. Because I know I was worrying, like, we seemed very weak. And I just felt a sense of, Trump may be a bully, but sometimes a country needs a bully. There's a lot of bullies out there, and sometimes you need somebody to stand up.
Well, or somebody who's not afraid to stand up, right? Who's willing to take
and
a
who's
bullet
able to
and
stand up,
willing to
and
stand
fight,
Yes.
his whole...
Exactly. So some of the big takeaways from that day that I think people were talking about is... I thought it was interesting when he talks about some of the stuff that he's going to do, and he talks about that Gulf of Mexico, changing it to Gulf of America. I'm just like, it's so Trump-like, where you've got like, he's got things that are so intelligent that he's like sometimes saying that he's going to do, and then you get these things that are just like so dramatic, and you're like, I'm going to change the Gulf of Mexico.
He's going to have giant fairs again. Like, he's bringing back the world fairs in America.
I'm like, come on. I'm like, just stay focused on the big issues we have at hand. Let's not make an enemy of just like everybody.
I think those things kind of endear him a bit, though, to people.
I definitely,
because it gives him humanity.
Yes,
and
I think that's it. I think that's got to be. It's got to be it. I thought so what else we find out is that not very long before the inauguration takes place, I don't know the exact time, but Biden does continue to sign more pardons, and in his pardon, he pardons his family, including his son, and the pardons go back all the way to January 2014 is when he pardons him from. So the way the pardon works is that, and it's one of those crazy kind of concepts that we just have continued to go forward as a nation, and we haven't taken this power away from presidents as being kind of the ultimate, like, discretion they have to pardon somebody. And I think the interesting thing about these pardons that people didn't realize is that you can pardon someone who's sitting in jail right now of a federal crime as a president. You can pardon them. And usually I like to leave that to people that are nonviolent crimes and people who have gotten, 25 years to life for marijuana possession and intent to sell or selling or trafficking and those kind of things, who have a bleeding heart story behind why they did it.
Biden pardoned murderers, though, too.
Yeah.
I mean, some savage murderers.
It was interesting.
Not his family, but,
And I think because every single one of those pardons usually have an intense story, like we broke them all apart. They usually have a story for why. They don't just pick and go, well, I'm going to go ahead and pardon that person. There usually is compelling facts of what took place that the legal department cannot undo at this point in time, because either you're past your appeal right time, or new facts came out later on. There's usually reasons why there's a compelling story of why a president will turn around. So they're sort of
at the top of the pardoning list.
Yeah. What happened?
Like when Trump first thing, the January 6th rioters pardoned, but that could be fought, later if they decide to do so. Or,
no, it's hard to undo that pardoning power. So those people are absolutely pardoned. Now, it's pardoned from federal crimes, and it's not necessarily state crimes. So there could be a question of is there a state that's going to come forward and potentially get involved and potentially file their own charges? But the jurisdiction of the White House is, I think, solely to the federal government. So the White what they were in the Capitol building, jurisdiction.
I know
of the
a lot
Capitol,
of them are coming back to Florida.
A lot of them. Yeah, a lot of so that would have been the jurisdiction of the federal government, which gives him that pardoning power. But the interesting part about the pardon was that the pardons that Biden did were not crimes that they have been accused of already or are sitting in jail of already. It's a pardon of anything that they may have done during that time that could come up now. So let's say we do find out. Is that like the
immunity that we were talking about?
It gives them full immunity of anything they did. Anything they may have done during all of those years of the last 11 years, some of the pardons that Biden did where they haven't been charged yet. So that was just an interesting thing.
How competent was he to pardon?
Well, they haven't. Everyone has been calling into question that how competent he is, but it didn't take much to think that. What in my mind, what it thought was how
I love my family more than I love my country.
No, I think it was, to me, what it felt like is that I think it's a realization of how dirty one side was. I think both sides can get very dirty, but how dirty one side got in order to try to stop his presidency. And I think they're afraid that Trump is going to potentially retaliate and come after, Fauci and those things. That he's threatened to do those things. Yeah.
Fauci is definitely on his list. Yeah. He has a list.
And I think it's interesting because it made me think that Biden must think, oh gosh, there's no limit that Trump must go to, so I must protect all my family, not just my son, but the rest of my family. Of anything that they have potentially done that's been charged or hasn't been charged.
This would be a good time, I think, to read Biden's letter.
Oh,
what do you think about the...
So when Biden left the White House, he leaves a letter.
If I can find it. Yeah, reporters they actually pointed it out to Trump. They were like, don't forget about the letter. And of course... Donald Trump was, let's open the
Biden's so adorable. I watched him so many times during the inauguration, and it was so adorable. He would just freeze and stare at what piece of paper he was looking at.
We'll talk about the people in the inauguration.
What a
Bush,
sweet man.
Some of his expressions, Musk, some of the Zuckerberg and Sanchez, and oh my gosh. But the letter that Biden left for Trump, it says, it was a handwritten letter in the desk. And it says, Dear President Trump, as I take leave of this sacred office, I wish you and your family all the best in the next 4 years. The American people and people around the world look to this house for steadiness in the inevitable storms of history. And my prayer is that in the coming years will be a time of prosperity, peace, and grace for our nation. May God bless you and guide you as he has blessed and guided our beloved country since our founding. Joe Biden, 1/20/25.
Oh, isn't that nice and professional?
I thought that was nice.
It really is. Because it's got to be...
Trump said, you know what, press? I'll read it personally, and then I'll let you know what it says. And I thought that was nice, too.
Yeah, I did. I thought that was nice. I I thought some of the other things that are interesting that I think people are bringing up during, like, from the actual inauguration is some of the stuff that I thought were interesting. He didn't actually formally address the January 6th and his promises of political retribution, but he did later on. So he didn't do his main speech. I thought there was a couple of times that he was talking, and it was like he was really talking about, I'm going to fix this, things that he's saying about, how poorly the government has been ran while they're just sitting there and have to just like smile.
Yeah.
I thought that was definitely an interesting spot. And then yes, of course, when he talks about the Gulf of Mexico, and then it goes over to Hillary Trump. Oh my God, Hillary Trump.
That'll be the day.
That'll be the day.
Definitely.
So when he's
that'll go viral quick.
When he's talking about changing the Gulf of Mexico to America, and then you get a shake of the head and a laugh from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
And then there's the Panama Canal too, wasn't he? He wants and Greenland.
Taking it all. He's just like,
and there's he did talk about being saved by God from the assassination attempt in his inauguration speech. Again,
I do think that was interesting, that there was more of a turn to the fact that I felt there was more of, like, I do think that there's no way around the fact that there's a part of this man that has been humbled, because there is no way, and from the legal perspective, when we talk about all those legal issues that were surrounding Trump before him winning this election, if he had not won this election, this is the difference between the civil cases where they have these judgments.
There'd be no X.
$500 million against him, and then you have the criminal charges where there's potential jail time. Between those two, they could have destroyed him, and the difference between him becoming president and becoming destroyed was a thin line. And I believe there's no way around it that he didn't feel that pressure. He didn't feel that closeness to it. So I think now you're seeing this more, in my opinion, humbled version, because
he's softer.
It was real close. It was real close to being the craziest thing most of us, that I've seen in my lifetime when it comes to a political issue, of a man who was a president. To some degree, it's like, I just think that when you're doing the ultimate sacrifice of leading our country and potentially putting yourself in a position where you can be assassinated, and you are doing what you can to try to do the best you can for our country, as a president, which not much people can really stand up and go, oh, he destroyed our nation as a president. That's not what has been said. It really is about people just not liking how outspoken he is and the things that he says. That's really, truly
and the Me Too
what
movement and all of that, and COVID, and it just...
Yeah, it really is a lot of those issues. But it's
a lot of bias in a lot of different places.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I just think that it was that people just really didn't believe that this could happen, that he could become president again. I think people who thought that it could happen were thinking, listen, we've seen crazier things. There's a possibility that it easily could not happen. But it was the difference for him, in my opinion, like we talked about before, of really truly life and death. And I think it's humbled him to a way that some of the things he was saying were way more like religious in nature. I felt like I was hearing more of when he said God, I believe God saved me for this. I have heard there are people who believe with their soul that Trump, which you would have never thought, is this person sent from God to save the country.
In his speech, I was saved by God to make America great again. Yeah. A couple of times.
Yep.
Verbatim. And he definitely believes that, as do many.
Yeah. And I just think there's definitely a humbling of him that I think you have to see, because it was that close, and so I like when he said, it is my hope that our recent presidential election will be remembered as the greatest and most consequential election in the history of our country, And I've heard him say these things before. It was like, I'm going to make America great again. I'm going to do all these things. And I don't necessarily think he always knew how he was going to do that very clearly. But I think he feels like he stands for more, especially when he talks about the unequal treatment. So when he talks about potentially, like, am I going to get retribution or any of those things. What he says is the scales of justice will be rebalanced. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. And that, to me, was what I feel like I've always been trying to explain from a legal perspective when it comes to Trump. And the fact that there's no way around it, that the government and what other people were involved utilized their political positions in order to target him unfairly as far as the way they move these cases and some of the charges. I'll stand behind it all day long, that those New York charges for inflating the value of those properties is absolute bull. That was the furthest reach I've ever seen any legal proceedings to go against somebody. And it was truly based on the fact that they were trying to find any way to stop him from running. And I think that that was where it was a scary place for our government to be at, to call it democracy, but to absolutely, they used all the resources they can. They expedited all of the criminal proceedings in a way that as a criminal defense attorney, everyone's looking going, what? You were able to pull all this together within less than a year to try this case? I mean, it was all in a way to stop him from being able to run.
The sentencing was like a few days before the inauguration.
Crazy.
It was crazy.
Yeah, it was absolutely a... And whether he did some of the things or not, that's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about as in the legal system in its whole. Some of the things that they had said and how they went about it was in a way to weaponize, and that's what I like how he used that word, was to weaponize the Justice Department. And for me, that was scary. That was the scariest part of it for an attorney. For a former sitting president to take a position against the way he believed an election happened is his right to do that. And then what people don't realize is that when Georgia tried to come after him for those things, they came after everybody who ever worked with him, his lawyers, his social media. I mean, it was like they arrested, people don't think about this, they arrested like 20-something people all around these issues with Trump. They were taking everybody down, and it was more in a political fashion than it was actually justice to me. And that was scary. So that part about it, to me, is what resonates.
In your opinion, do you think that there's parallels to be drawn between JFK and the government and President Trump? Do you think that's why he's so adamant about releasing some of those files? Do you think that maybe they were being persecuted by the government as well in the media, or is there something?
Who really knows?
Is Trump the first one? Is basically what I'm getting at. Is he sort of the first newest one to be like, I'm cracking the government open, and this is what's really going on?
Yeah? I don't think anyone has ran on a platform that sounds like. I believe the Justice Department that I'm about to become the leader of has been unfair. I don't think that that's usually what a president is running on, to call into question the authenticity, the justice of our entire government. That's not usually what presidents are doing. And so I definitely think that there's a lot more to be said to what potentially will end up be unfolding with what I think he will allow us to see and hear. And I think that one of them meaning, him demanding, the rest of the files for JFK to be opened. We won't know until they're opened to figure out what's the connection. Is it just because they're the last files that haven't been released? Is it personal to him? Or does he know something that's potentially in them that he wants the public to know? Why haven't they been released?
Who keeps them locked away? Like, what is that?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a good question of why some things don't get released. So at the end of the day, there's certain information that's public records, right? Mm-hmm. And the way they determine what's public record and what's not is that this great government country has, in essence, on a case-to-case basis, decided what they think, okay, as a government, whoever they is, it's government, that the government has decided what do we believe should be released and shouldn't be released. And it usually comes down, the question ends up starting with privacy rights. So that's the very first question we're usually asking is this a privacy right of something that shouldn't be released? The name of a child or something like that, where there are things we're not releasing, is it privacy issues? And then the second question is really, is it going to be beneficial for the public as a whole to get that information, or is it detrimental? And that's really where the question comes down to a government deciding, because case by case basis, we decide what information is going to get released for anything, a criminal investigation, all of those things.
Do the relatives have a say in it? I mean, I know the grandson is against it. He doesn't want it to.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's not. The question of does a family have a say in the releasing of information of a loved one goes, the first question is the information being released, is it private information that shouldn't be released? And then the question goes down to especially when we're talking about if it's a president or something like that, is there an overwhelming unbalancing of the rights? So maybe this person has a right to privacy, but also is it overcome by the right of the public, who he put himself as president, to be able to hear that information, which that's kind of what happens in a lot of these cases. We're talking about people who are high profile, any of those things, is that once you put yourself up as president or anything, or social media as an influencer, once you put yourself out there to the public, we actually have laws that say that you now have availed yourself to now the fact that your information in your public life is actually not public. I mean, not private. Your private life is not actually private. It's public because of what you did to make yourself as a public figure. So that's really kind of it. So in this instance, we have heard that with JFK, there's family members who have come forward and who have said that they don't want the information to be released.
Trump.
No, they're not going to.
You know, he is the government now.
They're not listening to them. They're so far removed from it that they're just like, we're not concerned really about what you guys have to say. And I don't know if they know what the information is that could potentially be released or not. But I absolutely believe that things like the assassination of a president, every single piece of it should be released to the public. I mean, assassination of a president.
There were 2 attempts against him, so he's going to probably feel even more impassioned.
Yeah, especially not letting us know. I mean, I really just think that the public has a right to understand what took place from beginning to end. In every single aspect, from the beginning of when it took place to anything that we think may be relevant to the end of the investigation. And I think it is unfair when we stop hearing about the further investigation, like the Trump assassination attempt. Like, what ended up happening?
I know.
What happened?
And we're going to follow that up because
the investigation because ironically, the investigation that is only left to be taken on is who failed. Why did so many departments potentially fail? With something that should have seemed so obvious? And it sounds like to me we're not hearing about it because of the fact that it's probably not really good for some of the people that were involved who failed to do what they were supposed to do. So I'm actually kind of interested that he didn't make more of a big deal about that part of it, because I would have been like, where's my investigation? Like, I want everything released. I want to know why didn't people, when people were telling the local police departments that they saw him scaling the roof, with a gun, why didn't anybody do anything? So I think it's interesting he hasn't really talked about that, but maybe he will.
Maybe he hasn't thought about it yet.
Yeah.
He got his Diet Coke, he got his button put on his desk. And I was watching when J.D. Vance walked in, and J.D. Vance, Trump showed him into the Oval Office, and J.D. Vance had never been in the White House before in his life. And he was saying it was really moving, because I don't know if he watched Hillbilly. I watched it too, and it was moving, and I think he's kind of a likable kid. I thought his kids were adorable at the inauguration, hanging all over the place. His wife, I loved her dress. But when he walked in and he just had a smile on his face, he said, who would have thought? Who would have thought a guy from Appalachia, is sitting here walking into the Oval. I'm getting chills from the Oval Office right now.
Yep.
And, and he comes from, addiction and stuff like that. And it was really moving. And Trump was like, here you are.
It's magical. I mean, it's insane to think about where he has come to now. And I think it may give you, I thought this was an interesting thing that I saw on the internet somewhere. And this is what I thought was really cool. So this is what I read somewhere. Martin Luther King was a convicted felon. Gandhi was a convicted felon. Nelson Mandela was a convicted felon. And even Jesus Christ was a convicted felon. Donald J. Trump got added to the list of the greatest world leaders who were convicted felons. But here's the interesting part. Maybe we ask, who is doing the convicting?
No, that's
That's
Brilliant.
what I thought was interesting.
Where did you find that?
I'm telling you, someone just posted it, and I thought, I was like, what I like about some of the things that we're seeing is that it's going, not only you can be from any background and you can get anywhere you want in the world. I mean, that's the whole entire idea, but also I think that there's a different level of empathy when you've been through things that are not technically like textbook. So it's like when you're talking about J.D. Vance's, I'm hoping that coming from poverty the way he came, living the life he came from, his addiction of his parents, his mother and his father being gone, and him admitting that he did some criminal things when he was really young, and that kind of stuff, and having to build from that. I hope he's able to take that into him being a vice president. You know, I think that's what ends up happening.
I feel that he will.
Yeah.
I do. And I like his wife.
Yes.
I do.
Yes. It definitely will be interesting.
I like the family. I like the kids. And, I think it's nice.
Yep. So what are some of the other interesting things that happened during the inauguration?
Well.
Oh, so who wasn't there? Which I was shocked.
Michelle
Obama. Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle's been missing.
Michelle.
It was a notable absence. And then I heard that there was
You think she was
Barack
busy?
is having an affair with Jennifer Aniston. I'm like, where did that come from?
I had heard for the election. I had heard them talking about is there trouble in paradise? You know, they were talking about is there an issue going on because they hadn't seen President Obama with his wife, and I was like, I ignored it. And then when she wasn't there, I was just like, the question was, is she not there because of their potential rift in a marriage, or is she not there because she's so against
Trump? And allegedly, that's what she said. She said, I can't subscribe to.
Has she made a statement? Has she said
I'm not
anything
sure.
to anybody?
I don't know if I read that. Like I say that that's what her camp has put out or anything, but I don't know if there was an official statement made. I could look it up.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Could you imagine if somebody was like, hey, we're going to be going to the inauguration, and she goes, yeah, I'm real busy that day. I made my hair appointment already, and there's no way I'm
going to spin class.
Yeah, where was she? They see her. She's hanging out with some friends. She's like, I'm super busy.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was, I think it meant a lot, I think that it's got to stand for something more than just her not being there. It's got to stand for something greater, and I'd like to hear what she thinks that is, or how she feels that.
What did you think about the show of power with Trump surrounded by all the tech giants and Zuckerberg and his new what does he call him, the White House best friend, Elon Musk, and all of that, just being surrounded by that? Like, how did you feel about that? I noticed Zuckerberg wasn't with his wife either, and he seemed to be very occupied with Lawrence Sanchez.
Oh my gosh, that was hilarious. That was hilarious. With what she was wearing, everyone was so up in arms about it. I was only up in arms, so I was like, hey, you were going to be outside in the freezing cold. What was your plans there?
She can't really
that's going to be super cold. I'm not sure that was going to work out.
I know. I liked the black, but I don't know about the white.
Yeah. I think that really just reminds you of how much political influence there is behind successful companies, and that they want to play the politics game. And that's really what was happening, and what took place is that they have all taken stands against him at different times. I mean, Zuckerberg had to admit that he was allowing so much filtering and manipulation of the information in Facebook that he was affecting the outcome of the elections. He did, in a way, against Trump. So for just to see all those people who I think at some point in time were against him, it just shows that everybody's playing the game. That's really all that was. It's not like they genuinely liked him or were for him. They really are like, listen, we have a lot of things we want to do, And little do you guys know that for a lot of those companies to be successful, they need to be one with the government and be in with the government.
That's what I felt.
It's
I felt
how
it
they
was
make
a
money.
stand
Yeah.
again to the world that we are, especially with AI. You know,
Yeah.
we're on the top. We're on
Yeah.
top of everything.
Yep.
You know, and then with the TikTok.
I think it
And
was.
Trump,
I just
thanks
think.
to the general.
Oh my gosh, it was so crazy TikTok. I just I don't think it's we're united. I think it's of we know how to play the game. That's all it looked like to me. That's all it looked like. That they
Like
were
a
like
chess game. You just think that it. Do you think it was bad form that they were there?
I think right
other
now
than
people are
dignitaries
afraid
and things like that.
I think that
like
there are people that are
an
afraid to be
oligarchy?
on his bad side. I think
Really?
they're rightfully afraid to be on his bad side. So I think that they have acquiesced pretty
What do you
easy
think
and
about that?
fast.
Do you think they have good cause to feel that way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is.
He has power to open up things people don't want opened and to investigate things they don't want investigated. And so I think a lot of people are noticeably and probably rightfully frightened by that, and they should be.
Well, we're going to talk about the people being frightened with the immigration orders and the 14th
absolutely.
Amendment.
We will. So that's it for today's Legal Candy episode. Join us. We will be talking about about the 14th Amendment. What does that mean for legalization of potentially illegal aliens, and what that means if you're born here. Are you considered a citizen still? What does that matter? And some of the controversies around. I mean, people take serious stands against immigration. So
And what it means to the Constitution, too.
Yep.
Too. So
Absolutely.
please follow us and subscribe to Legal Candy. Hit that bell. Smash that bell. We'll be back.
Absolutely. Any
Thank
questions,
you.
comments, concerns, please let us know. And thank you for joining us.